Alright, wrap up time for Owling Mine in Modern. So, the deck was okay. It was a lot of fun to play, and we had some incredibly explosive and sweet turns where we would, like, 20 our opponent out of nowhere, just do some really cool things, but we really struggled with consistency. We had maybe because we're an 18 land deck, we just had a lot of one land draws where we had to mulligan, then we also flooded out sometimes. So there was a lot of inconsistency in our mana, for one thing, but there was also inconsistency in just drawing the right things. So having a whole bunch of Howling Mine effects does help. It lets us cycle through our deck, but there were still times where we just didn't draw finishers, and since Howling Mine and all those cards allow the opponent to draw as well, we're drawing them into action, so we had some incredibly close and frustrating losses. Probably the best example was against Abs Company, where our opponent was able to double Chord of Calling on their upkeep to get the infinite life combo when we had lethal damage on the stack. So there was some crazy things like that happened. And the deck just has some issues with the format to some extent. I mean, we got absolutely run over by our budget green-red shaman list, which is a really aggressive and fast deck, but if we're getting run over by green-red shaman, imagine how much we would get run over by Infect or Death Shadow Zoo or other decks that play like green-red shaman but aren't really based on being on a budget. Those decks just really need one turn to kill you with their kind of creature-based pump spell combos. So we really have this pressure where we have to keep them tapped down every turn, plus we're drawing them cards, and they don't even need that much mana to function. Some of those matchups are incredibly hard, and unfortunately those matchups are really big in Modern. As far as the substitutions, Fevered Visions over Kami of the Crescent Moon seem good. It's a little annoying that it's slower, but I think Kami would have just died a lot to Lightning Bolts and Path to Exiles, where Fevered Visions never really died, and when we actually stuck one, it was very good, the damage was good, the card draw was good, so that was a great change. Rune Flare Trap for Sudden Impact was also very good. A lot of the wins we did get, and even the almost wins, like the one I was talking about with Abs Company, were thanks to the fact we could cast Rune Flare Trap for 1 mana with a bunch of Howling Mine effects on the battlefield, so that was key. If that was a 4-mana spell, Sudden Impact, which is the same text essentially, but without the trap cost. But if it was Sudden Impact, we wouldn't have been able to do that stuff. We needed all of our mana a lot of times to Rune Flare Trap for 2 mana, when that would be 8 mana if it was Sudden Impact, or Rune Flare Trap plus Twin Cast, which would be 6 mana, and we were doing that for 3 mana. So changing to Rune Flare Trap was definitely a huge advantage, and we never really were punished by Rune Flare Trap being 6 mana with the trap cost, because we don't really want to cast it with Rune Flare Trap being 6 mana without the trap cost, because we don't really want to cast it unless our opponent's drawing a bunch of cards anyway, because it's not that great when we're doing 4 damage. So we're usually waiting until we have multiple Howling Mine effects and Temple Bells to hit our opponent for 8, 9, 10 damage in one shot, and in those cases, we're always going to be able to cast it for the trap cost, so I think it's just the right choice in the deck. Otherwise, probably the most disappointing part of the deck was the sideboard. The Worm plus Nourishing Shoal combo, just not good. Even in aggressive matchups, I just couldn't figure out how to bring it in. Like, what are we taking out for that? And in aggressive matchups, we're probably going to be dead by turn 3, turn 4, turn 5 at the latest. What are the odds, even with Howling Mines and Temple Bells and Fevered Visions, that we're going to just randomly draw both halves of that combo to be able to do it? And then, even if we do it, what are the odds that it's going to be good enough to win us the game? So I think that could be better used on something else. Blood Moon was good, and maybe the most impressive card in our deck was Exhaustion. It was really a 3-mana Time Walk a lot of the time. Like, it was so incredibly good. Yeah, our opponent got to make a land drop, but our opponent almost never did anything relevant on the turn after Exhaustion. And being able to chain exhaustions was one of the most powerful thing our deck could do. Just keep our opponent tapped down for multiple turns. The downside is sometimes we didn't have enough mana and we were just doing parity exhaustions where we weren't really getting ahead. What we need to be doing is making sure we hit our land drops so we can exhaustion plus Temple Bell to keep drawing, set up our win, things like that, or exhaustion plus boomerang something to get another card in our opponent's hand. But some of the times we were just exhaustioning to exhaustion to make sure our opponent didn't kill us, and that's not where we wanted to be. But I was very intrigued by the potential of exhaustion. At only 3 mana, it is significantly cheaper than something like Time Warp, which is kind of the gold standard for taking an extra turn in Modern. And while exhaustion isn't quite Time Warp, it is incredibly close to a Time Warp. And you can potentially exhaustion, flash back exhaustion with Snapcaster for the same amount of mana as a Time Warp. So, why I'm not sure this is exactly the perfect frame for it, I'm really interested to try to work with exhaustion because the effect seemed incredibly powerful and it really did feel like a 3 mana Time Warp a lot of the time. So, anyway, the deck was fun. I think it's competitive enough that if you want to mess around with it and play it, I would say go for it, but I wouldn't expect to have any huge success with it. But I would take it to an F&M just to try it out because it's a lot of fun to play. It's different. It does some unique things, so that would be my suggestions. So anyway, that's been our Much Abrew About Nothing for this week. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the videos, and I will talk to you soon.